Welcome back to DNA, and thank you for joining us on another fun and thrilling adventure. Today is August 13th, 2022, and we are back out in California Park on our way to Slater Park, and more specifically Adams Park. For those of you that are just joining us, this is part 2 of our Rainbow Family Gathering 2022 documentary. We've been documenting this since the beginning, the lead up to their main event on July 3rd and 4th, where they all gathered together and prayed for world peace. As some of you know, there was a lot of resistance for this. There were a lot of local folks that were very apprehensive. There was a lot of federal Forest Service opposition to it because of the impact that it might have. They expected up to 30,000 people. I believe that they probably peaked at 10 to 15,000. This time we're on our way out to document the recovery of the land and to see how complete their cleanup efforts have been. This will be a compilation of a number of trips that we've taken. In our past episode, we had come out and there was a few people left. We've been informed that most of the Rainbow family has now left and that their cleanup efforts have come to conclusion. So we intend to ride out on our mountain bikes, which is going to be fun, nice little adventure, and look at the recovery of the forest lands. We're now standing in front of what was deemed main supply or Handicap. This was an area that the elders for the Rainbow family, a lot of them that couldn't get into the main event, this is the area that they would stay and camp out at. From this point, the Rainbow family would drop off supplies and redistribute them to the mini kitchens that were at their main event site. This, as you can see, is now cordoned off, and the National Forest Service is now disallowing people to come in to this area. This is unfortunately what the locals were most concerned with, and those people that frequent this national forest. This area was what was known as Handicap, and once again, now we have a sign that says that it's closed off. We're here at the Adams Creek trailhead itself, and this area was always closed off to Jeep traffic, but 60-inch wide ATVs and less horseback and bicycle traffic was always permitted. As we move over this way, this area, as you might have seen in some of our other videos, was a huge pile of trash that during the cleanup phase there were people stationed here that were dividing up the different types of trash from plastics and papers and metals to be recycled. Over the period of time of a couple of weeks, they were slowly shuttling this stuff out to the dump. Now off here in the distance, you also see the main parking area. This was where the vast majority of the cars were, in this particular area, and then down below on the other side of the county road. This area is now all closed off to motor vehicles, which is understandable. We always, as locals and people that attended this area often, we always traveled lightly around here and very seldom got off the roads. There is another large camping area up here that we ourselves have frequented, and one of our favorite camping areas. So we're hopeful that this area won't be forbidden or closed. During almost the entire Rainbow Gathering, a gentleman stayed here with his hammock strung between these two trees, and I never saw him move for weeks. This was his little camp, and it seems to be not that worse for wear. It's, unless you knew that he was here, you probably wouldn't notice. Another campsite. Barely even tell there was a fire there. There were camps all the way through here. This was Free Shoe Guy. Camped here. Gentleman had offered us shoes or whatever else we needed. It's actually more grasses growing back than the weedy old skunk cabbage. This approaching a really big camp up here. This was kind of a dedicated kitchen. As you can see, there's more fresh grass. There aren't that many weeds or the skunk cabbage that normally takes over some of these areas. At the moment, the vegetation looks really nice. Looks pretty lush and green, and is coming back pretty well. Actually, the trail has grown back in considerably. It's in better shape for this time of year than I've seen it in the past. This was once a very travelable footbridge that the Rainbow family had constructed that we walked across many times. They had used what was here, the resources that were here, kind of bridged it out and corduroyed it so that the water could get through and it wouldn't create more erosion. And it looks as though the Forest Service has, and I did see it tagged, the Forest Service required them to rip all of that out. And now you have just a highly erodible mud bog that isn't very pleasant to travel through. And this is a recreational trail. Very frustrating, because there are some of these instances that I feel that it leaves the impression that the Forest Service is just trying to keep the public out rather than to improve its recreational capabilities and enjoyment.
Oh, shit.
Mushies. This is the entry point, really, to the main event area. This is where we come around the corner and look out, and there were hundreds and thousands of people. And there were tents and kitchens and groups and clans and a lot of activity. And at this point, if you didn't know it, you wouldn't even be able to tell it. Something that I find fascinating is that these areas that were heavily occupied, we now set in one of the larger kitchens. As you can see, it's all growing back with nice natural grasses and ferny stuff. If you look beyond, you can see that the more natural, I'm sure, is brushy and weedy and a little bit impassable. And I'm sure from the Forest Service's perspective, that's what they would like to see as being taken back to nature.
But I think that it's important to understand that all of this is along a recreational trail. And we have now several times stopped to have a bite to eat in a few of these little camp spots that are actually nice for humans to come and to sit down, have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and get back on the trail and go. It's I understand from a rewilding perspective it might be a little bit different, but these guys have done a fantastic job of cleaning up. We haven't found one piece of trash other than notes hanging in trees on flags by what I assume to be the Forest Service, requesting them to do more work, or having requested work, the work having been done, and then the Forest Service not retrieving their flags, if that's who is leaving these markers as that state what needs to be done to rewild it. Other than that, you can look out into some of these areas and see that the greener, nicer, less weedy areas are really the more occupied areas. They, for the most part, look fantastic. Remove bridge. So they want to remove said bridge, which really keeps this muck hole from getting worse, because people are going to come through here in four-wheelers and stuff. And by removing the bridge, it's just going to allow it to get worse. I don't know how I feel. I can tell you that the Rainbow family folks that are here cleaning this stuff up are doing a tremendous job. I feel I stand corrected, really. I mean, I haven't explored every nook and cranny, but the places that I have looked and the things that I have seen, I am beyond impressed with the cleanup effort. And I think I really have to step back. Oh, there's a little snake crossing the road.
Hi, buddy.
Little water snake. He's having a heck of a time getting up the... Here he goes.
Hi, buddy.
He was having a heck of a time. But I really have to reassess the way I approach this and the way I looked at it. It was a little bit unfair and judgmental for sure. And I'm not saying that there's not impact, but there is. There is impact with everything that everyone does. But these people didn't do an excessive amount of damage. And to be honest with you, for as many people as were here, I'm astonished at how little damage is left. Forest Service might not agree, but from an outside perspective, that's the way it is. I mean, we spend a considerable amount of time in the outdoors. We love it more than most, as much as anyone, and we're protective. But they've really done a pretty good job of rewilding everything. Up in here was another kid camp. You can see they've blocked access by stacking timber to try to keep people out, which I get. Maybe it'll give the area a little time to recover, maybe because it's been seeded. But before they did that, this area looked pretty nice. Freaking wonderland. This was a massive camp area for the kids.
This is where they kept all the kids away from the mayhem and out of the sun a little. Just below us was the drum circle. Can't really tell that it was there at the moment. It's a little barren, but there's always been a elk wallow there, moist spot where this little draw empties out. It always stays a little muddy. Wildlife go down there and roll around in the mud. Really, unless you knew what you were looking at, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
This is roughly the vantage that we had one day on the July the 3rd during feeding time. And all of this area behind me was full of people, probably at least a few thousand, if not more, that were sharing news, sharing information, doing stupid human tricks, and getting ready to be fed. And in about 45 minutes, wagons came full of pots of stews and food, came out of the hills and into this area, fed everybody in about 45 minutes. It's the end of the day, August 13th, 2022. And we've just got done riding the entire Adams Creek loop through the main event area of the Rainbow Gathering for this season. And I must say we are incredibly impressed. We've looked over many of the campsites and kitchen areas and parking areas. And much to my surprise, there is almost no trash. We did find a couple of pieces, but other than that, it is clean, cleaner than I've ever seen it in the past. As you can see behind me, this is A Camp, and this is where the main parking area was for the event. And as you can see, it's recovering rather well. There are a few trails up in there, and of course, the National Forest has closed off many of the trails that were developed during the event. One of the things that I must note is that we found a number of camps that, would have probably better been left open. The only trash or the only debris, unnatural things that we found are the ribbons that have been hung by the Forest Service requesting more re-veg or more reclamation. But the reclamation's been done now and the ribbons have been left. I hope the Forest Service will find time to come out here and get those taken down. I do wish some of the more developed sites or some of the decent sized developed sites back along the park would have been left open and not completely reclaimed and filled back up with down timber. But other than that, the trail is great. One noticeable thing that I found to be disappointing was that the Forest Service required that the Rainbow family removed a lot of the crossing bridges that they had built across mud bogs and swampy areas that before they were here and again now, ATVs and foot traffic and bike traffic just make these mud bogs, and people have a tendency to go around them and do more damage. It doesn't make much sense to me that they were required to take those out because that seemed to keep people on the trail. For those communities that are possibly expecting the Rainbow family to hold a national event in their area, there are a few things I'd like to make note of. As far as the reclamation and the impact on the land goes, the cleanup is real. The Rainbow family has done a phenomenal job of cleaning up after themselves. It's taken a while. but they really have put the effort in, and they've really done it. Many of these campsites that were kind of trashed a little bit before from hunting season and from other campers that were not as sensitive to nature, they cleaned those areas up very well, and they've done a very good job of revegetating and rewilding. I would suggest that local communities and towns really brace and get ready for these things, these events. There is a lot of people that come into these areas, and there is an element that isn't as savory as others. Our local police force really upped their presence. They brought on some help, and they made sure that there were officers out and visible all the time and at the stores, and it really helped. Our town manager sent a message to the Rainbow family on their website and said, "You're welcome in our town, but we want you to understand and respect our laws and understand our expectations." And he was really stern, and I think that made a difference. I think it's very important for the people to take very seriously the federal, state, county, and local municipalities' law enforcement needs. Our town really braced for it, and we had almost no issues whatsoever. But our neighboring town did not, and the issues still linger. They had some petty crime and things like that that were a bit disturbing. But I feel like if everyone understands, prepares, and gives the law enforcement the support that they need, these things go off without a hitch. The event goes well. There are fewer drugs, there's less petty crime in the towns, and there's less of a negative impact in their towns. All in all, it turned out pretty well. If counties or local communities can talk their local dumps and refuse sites into providing big roll-off dumpsters for these things, some place for these people to put this trash, it really, really helps. Even if you can require that they do that, they do have funding sources, and they probably can afford it if they really try. So I think that really helped here, because we had a couple of huge roll-off dumpsters, and they were obviously filled to the brim and overfull. So, but they were useful. The Rainbow Family Gathering of 2022 in Adams Creek Park has now finally come to a close. And the land that we were so afraid was going to be decimated is well on its way to recovery. Now it's back to business as usual. Hikers and bikers and trail riders are enjoying the trail. Campers are out enjoying the wilderness, and our forest is back to what it used to be, or at least close to. Thank you for joining us again for another DNA Fantastic Adventure. We love taking you with us every time we get out and explore the great outdoors. Make sure and hit like and subscribe. It really helps us out. That way you'll be notified every time we take you on a new adventure. Thanks again for joining DNA Travel.